Okay, there you go.
Good.
As per usual, it's been a rush for me again today.
Yes.
But then the cost will come back to.
Good afternoon, councillors, staff, members of the public. Welcome along to this meeting of the Community Wellbeing Committee. I have no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest? If not, we'll move straight into the public forum. Noel, welcome along. You know the seat. You've got a choice of two. Once again, Noel, you know you've got 10 minutes to present. If you want to use all that time yourself, that's fine. Otherwise, if you'd like councillors to have some time to ask questions,
Thank you, Chair.
don't use it all.
I probably won't spend the whole 10 minutes speaking because I have provided some supplementary material, which you no doubt have, and I think it's actually well timed that I'm presenting it now because it's my Christmas present to you. You'll have lots of time over Christmas to go into it. It's quite complex, and it's actually just a sort of snapshot of what's going on with climate change. It's not the total thing. In fact, every day there's new information coming forward that really needs to be paid attention to. And if it's any help, I've actually created a Facebook page called Climate. And if you don't use Facebook, well, bad luck, or borrow somebody else's. But I'm ongoingly, voluntarily keeping a timeline up to date of what's actually happening. A lot of it's global picture. It's not just what's happening in New Zealand. I think that if you could focus on this picture that I've got right at the top in the beginning, a low carbon economy, what's the hold up? And if we take off the masks and you know, start to really look at what the issue is and how serious it is and what the problem is, instead of kicking the can down the road, we'll actually make some progress. And I'm actually here to try and be helpful and to initiate some discussion within councils. And I don't mean just Invercargill City Council. I'm hoping to go and speak to all the councils, including the regional council. But as you see in my comments here, you'll see, well, there could well be a unitary council in the future. So, but it is all about working together. It's all very much about working as a team. I do think seriously that we need to start investing some serious money in this whole climate change matter. It's a crisis. The other word for a crisis is an emergency. The nation, the Prime Minister declared it as an emergency 2 years ago, and we're still barely mentioning it here in council chambers. So I think it's something that we need to put serious money into, and the longer you leave it, the more serious it's going to be and the more money it's going to cost. And instead of having nice to have projects spending tens of millions, we've got to start looking at spending some millions, if not tens of millions, on climate mitigation and climate adaptation and resilience. And interestingly, I see there's some people here today that are going to speak to you about food resilience, about having resilience in our local community. And you know, it's at a dangerous point. There's not a lot of people actually growing food here. And instead of having some crumbs off the council table, that and this particular subject needs to have some proper investment. I'll leave it there, open to questions.
Thanks, Noel. Tom.
No, look, this whole subject is like an elephant. Nobody knows quite how to grab it, right? And when I mean, it's so big. I mean, if you could advocate for the council doing just one thing at the moment, what would it be?
Climate change.
No, I know, but I mean, climate change is the elephant I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Within that, What would you have us do if we could only do one thing?
Well, as I've said in this document, I'm looking at a climate education hub as an online hub and as a roadshow. And the roadshow, I would suspect, would go to the schools and teach the younger people, because the future is in the young people. And like, you know, I've been involved in this climate elephant for over 50 years. You know, it started way back in the 1970s when we shouldn't even talk about it. And I think that we're actually getting a grasp on it, Councillor Campbell. If you start looking at some of the information that I've presented here, you'll see that people are actually getting a handle on it. There's a huge big movement happening around the world. And, you know, I've actually suggested some things that the council could do directly is you know, convert your fleet, your vehicle fleet to full electric. And like 6 months ago, I was told that you're looking at getting hybrids. Well, you know, there's no point in having a foot in the fossil fuel puddle and another foot in the electric puddle. You need to actually stick to that. Go to full electric. Hydrogen's some years away, so that won't happen straight away. You know, convert all your parks equipment to electric. And I did see in the last agenda for the Risk and Insurance Committee that there'd been quite a saving, and they bought some electric mowers and such like, and little electric buggies, and that's great, but it needs to happen faster, and they need to be, you know, electric, because the last time I went to Queen's Park a month ago, there was a 15 horsepower mower going around mowing grass that didn't need to be mowed, and a guy with a petrol blowing leaves around that didn't need to be blown around. In fact, they were petals from the flowers. And like, you know, you need to set an example, and then by the time you roll your vehicles over in 3 years' time, you've got a fleet of vehicles you can sell to the community.
Thank you.
That's just a smidgen of what I'd be talking about.
Ringy.
3 questions. First one, this one's a yes or no question. Do you think electric vehicles should pay road user tax?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, are you happy buying something that's perceived to be emission free, yet it's made in a country that uses coal-fired power to drive its whole industry?
Yes, because the benefit of an electric car, even if it's powered by coal-fired electricity, is far better than using fossil fuels.
Okay, and do you believe that spending millions of dollars on this feel-good project comes ahead of the welfare of the people of Invercargill that are struggling to pay power bills, struggling to feed themselves?
I don't think this is a feel-good project. I think
No. Forget about the feel-good part.
Yeah.
Answer the question.
What you used
What
to feel
about the money that's being spent?
I think it would be money well spent.
Okay, more so than feeding people and giving them.
Well, you know, as I've just said, you know, if you give the Murihiku Collective a decent amount of money so that people can actually grow gardens and grow their own food, we'd be on the right road. The two are intertwined.
Well, thank you for not answering the question. Yeah.
Barry.
No. What's going to happen with all these electric vehicles once the batteries go? What are you going to do with those?
Okay. What actually happens with electric vehicle batteries is they actually become storage batteries for solar units or wind power units in houses, and they can do quite a few decades in that position. And then if you do a little bit of homework on the internet, you'll discover that in areas where there's already batteries being collected, where there's high populations, they're actually being reprocessed, and there's a 99% reuse of all the materials that come out of those batteries. And they've actually designed a circular economy for electric car batteries so that you know, even here in New Zealand, when we had enough of them to process, well, then they'd get shipped off. But that's, you know, a couple of decades, if not more, away.
Why is the paddocks of them overseas that people have just dropped in the paddock and left them there?
Oh, that's actually a falsehood. You're talking about in France. There's some electric cars that were left stored in a paddock. It was actually because the company went broke. It was nothing to do with the batteries or the cars.
Yeah.
And they've actually since been refurbished and reused.
And my next point is, where are we going to get the power to pair all these
Well,
batteries up?
you know, your
can
power
it supply
company,
enough now?
yeah, Invercargill Electricity, a year ago, actually came to your council, and I was actually involved in it. There was a photograph of me involved in it, saying that you know, even if we had a doubling in the increase of demand for electricity here in Invercargill, we're quite secure. So you know, and there will be, there's a downstream program that you're going to see coming of wind power and solar energy that's going to provide that.
Just one more thing.
No, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah,
I'm not
carry
going to
on.
get into an EV debate. We're talking about climate change as a whole, and actually we're at time for the presentation.
Thanks, Noel.
Thanks for circulating the information prior to coming along, Noel. Thank you for your passion. Let me also remind you that from a local government perspective, Environment Southland are taking the lead on this. We're actually participating in that as well, so I think it's also very important that you have a talk.
Yeah, I'm quite aware of that, Councillor Ludlow, and I'm going to go and speak to them next year.
Excellent.
And at the moment, they're into the logistics of all that downstream stuff that's going to come from central government. And like they're not actually out doing the promotional stuff, and in my document you'll see that my argument for the City Council doing the promotional is that this is where the majority of the population is, and you guys already have a rapport with the community, and you're the springboard between the community.
The
not
point
the
is in your
regional council.
paper. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Bridget, welcome along. Been a while actually. Welcome back to the table. Bridget's representing the Cancer Society and addressing us about new resources on ultraviolet radiation. Timely.
Yeah, today's good weather for it, isn't it? 27 degrees. So I've actually got some things to give to you, physically give to you, and aroha mai, Panya and Evelyn, I don't have printouts for you, but I'd be very happy to email them. I'll be emailing all the council. I also have hats, which I don't have ones for you, but I could totally get them for you. Like, I can do that. So I'll just stick them here, and I'm not sure if somebody would want to hand these out to the councillors. Oh, so cool. Got the wee names sort of poking above the thing. Alrighty. So kia ora koutou, ko Bridget Forsyth toko ingoa. Ke te kahui mā te pukupuku ki o tākou me murihuku aho e mahi ana. Kia ora, I'm Bridget Forsyth. I work for the Cancer Society, Otago Southland Division. Oopla, sorry. Councils are in a unique position to implement strategies and enable people to live healthy, active lifestyles. For instance, we acknowledge that this council already puts people before the tobacco industry by supporting the smoke-free and vape-free environments with your fabulous smoke-free policy. Today, however, I'm focusing on different harm and a different cancer. The harm is excessive UVR, ultraviolet radiation, and the cancer is skin cancer, which happens to be our most common cancer. Shade is an important infrastructure issue, and if we want to turn the tide on skin cancer. We all know that we need to take responsibility to slip, slop, slap and wrap, but slipping into shade is only an option if there is some shade available. We're not suggesting everything is covered, but we are asking that some built shade and natural shade is planned and specifically funded for in planned upgrades for our play spaces. Aotearoa has the highest death rate for melanoma in the world, and along with Australia, we have the highest incidence. We tend to sort of take turns at that. Yet skin cancer is highly preventable. Over 90% of skin cancer is caused by too much sun. We do need some sun, but in New Zealand we tend to get too much. In fact, here in the Southern District, we have higher rates of melanoma than many other districts. In fact, the age standardised rate per 100,000 in 2019, we were the second highest in the country for melanoma. Playgrounds are available to all parts of our community and are especially used by our tamariki, our children. This makes them a great place to invest in some high quality shade. Sunburn at any age increases the risk of melanoma, but sunburn in childhood is particularly risky. The more sunburns, the greater the risk. Our UV environment from September through to the end of March is usually high enough to cause damage to people with fair skin in Invercargill, and UV peaks in January. We know this because NIWA have provided us 10 years of UV index data. The UV index is a measure of the intensity of UV radiation, and the larger the number, the more intense the UV. I've included this map for each of you. The World Health Organization recommends sun protection when the UV index is 3 and above, and this map shows you that Invercargill has about 3 months, 104 days to be specific, each year when the UVI is 6, so that's high, so that's the side with the orange, and we have on average 57 days at or above 8, which is very high. You don't have a map for that, sorry. And we have about a week's worth when the UVI is about above 11, and that's extreme, that's the purple side. So UV radiation increases as you get closer to the equator, and that we end up with other councils being a bit ahead of us in terms of shade provision, partly because we don't use shade to cool ourselves down here because we don't get the hot temperatures with it. And what people don't realise is that the light that we see, the daylight, and the heat that we feel, they're separate from the UV. We can't actually see or feel UV, and that gets really tricky when we have cooler climates like we do down here. We can just stay outside for ages and get way too much UV. So, and that's why we can still get sunburnt on those cool and cloudy days. Appropriate shade in Invercargill will make outdoor space more comfortable to use in all seasons, and it may even extend the life of play equipment beyond our summer months by providing shelter from rain. It can also be aesthetically pleasing, and it's an equitable form of sun protection and will provide for future generations to come. Strategically planted trees can also be a good option. It's usually great though if we can have a combination of both built and natural shade. So UV radiation can reach a person on the ground directly from the sun, but it can also be scattered around and reflected by surfaces. So good shade has the potential to significantly reduce the UV exposure. We don't think the public should have to choose between shade and play equipment in a country with one of the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. Many of our schools are sun smart, and many people look after their kids with sun protection. If we could have a little more shade strategically placed where our children congregate, we will reduce the overall UV exposure. UV damage builds up over a lifetime, and the damage we do in childhood remains with us. It changes our DNA. It causes about 90,000 non-melanoma skin cancers every year in this country, on top of the melanoma I was talking about earlier, and they all need treating. Melanoma is a very aggressive cancer, and it's twice as many men die from it than women. Together with the ICC playing the part, we can turn the tide on skin cancer. And so finally, I've provided you with that information and a sun hat that we've made to go with the information. I'll be emailing digital versions of that info and a link to a nifty video that Australia, the New South Wales Cancer Institute have put out, which just has a really good way of demonstrating that we can't see or feel UV, but it's still there, causing potential damage. And yeah, I'll email that to each of you. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those.
Kia ora, thanks Bridget, and thank you for the bucket hats particularly. I was just looking at one the other day. Rangi and then Mayor Clark.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. My question is regarding health WorkSafe, and obviously I'm on their website now looking at, they've got a section on protecting workers from solar UV radiation. Cool. Now, how closely do you work with WorkSafe in the sense that, has a company been prosecuted for failing to provide their outdoor workers, which could be builders, could be anyone, could be, have they, because obviously if you're looking at men have twice the rate, potentially, and I'm not being sexist here, that men may have more outdoor professions. Yeah, and so how strictly is that enforced, that employers look after, make sure, you've got all the right gear and
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the enforcement side of it. I work for a charity, and we're not funded by
This is
WorkSafe
obviously,
or anything,
the
but
workforce is a key part of
yeah, and it's
people.
great. Definitely, we encourage our workplaces to.
No, but I mean, but that's, I mean, you got to encourage
Rangi, I
them.
think you're missing the point.
No, the question is that obviously with WorkSafe, have you, worked with
I
them?
personally haven't worked with WorkSafe, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in the Kansai around the country has. I couldn't answer your question about the lawsuits being taken. I really don't know about that.
The reason I'm asking there, Chair, is so that often the only way you get people to follow the rules is enforcement, like to wear safety boots, to wear safety equipment and stuff. And so you're obviously saying the seriousness of this means.
I'm very keen to sort of spread that message and get people to thinking about it, definitely.
So I was just wondering how close you were with WorkSafe.
Personally, I haven't worked with WorkSafe closely. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my colleagues have. But I'm sorry, I can't answer the question. It would be great to have workplaces definitely take on board those SunSmart messages, because definitely we want everyone to be protected and to have their workplaces provide them the best they can to support them. So if you know anybody who works in that space, I'd be happy to chat to them.
No, I'm keeping out of it. I'm just asking the question. Yeah.
Mayor Clark.
Yeah, Bridget, two things, I guess. One is the issue of the lotions that we get to slap on. There's been a lot of consumer affairs and others have looked into the research that some of the stuff that's branded at +50 and +35 actually isn't all that effective. So is your society doing some work around what is safe? Like the last survey I saw said that a brand called 365, which is
When they sell at the warehouse, I think.
yeah, it is, and it's actually the cheapest, but it ranked the highest of all of them.
Yeah, I think that's because it's an Australian-made one, and we have actually been doing a bit of work in that space. Currently, in Australia, sunscreens are treated as a pharmaceutical good. In New Zealand, they're a cosmetic good, which we think is wrong, and we've been advocating for that to change. I understand that is currently, it's tied up in a new amendment or an act that's going through right now, but it's a big omnibus one which has got lots of other parts in it, so I would be able to find out where we're up to with that, but I think it is going to eventually, we're going to have a place where our sunscreens are mandatorily have to meet the certain criteria. Currently a lot of the sunscreens in New Zealand voluntarily meet the Australian New Zealand guidelines. Personally, I don't recommend any above each other. If you buy the Kansai ones, the profits donate to our work, but I don't rate ours above any others. Just try to get one that is at least SPF 50, broad spectrum. And when they're meeting the testing requirements, I know that an SPF 51 to meet that criteria on the mandatory ones, it actually has to be SPF 60. So every now and then we'll have the consumer sunscreen ones and they'll say, oh look, this sunscreen actually was only 40 or was 45 or even 30. Personally, as a health promoter, I don't mind as long as it's above 30 and you're reapplying every 2 hours, because no matter what the SPF is, even if it's 50 or higher, you still have to reapply every 2 hours. So like the lab use of it compared to real life use. So I'm not that worried about people using ones that haven't met the label, but obviously they should.
Yep. And the last question is the issue of just promoting some risk areas. So
Some what, sorry?
some risk areas.
Risk areas.
So I've had three lots of melanoma in recent times, and one of the ones that really surprised me was the back of my hand. And they said that a lot of truck drivers do that. They just drive like that. They slap everyone else. Don't worry about the hands, because
Our hands are exposed all the time.
they sit up on the dashboard in the sun all day and every day. And that's how I got mine. So
I'm sorry.
no, not to be sorry. Just sometimes we don't know the risks that we're facing until it's too late.
Well, and it's that thing where it adds up every day. And that's the thing, is like our hands are literally out and about every day.
Yep.
So yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about that. And people who are outside driving and stuff like that, we used to wear gloves back in the day. It's probably not a bad idea.
Well, that's what they're suggesting with the truck drivers. They should wear the fingerless gloves.
Yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Bridget, for your attendance today and educating us about the concerns of the Cancer Society. One of the things I'm interested in knowing is you've identified the sunshades that could help prevent extra UVI protection, especially throughout times of the years. So we know that a lot of our primary schools at the moment are looking after the children in that way. What's your view in terms of shade or sunshades in our streets? Are you asking the council to take a lead there and provide that for all of our community members?
I mean, if you're doing a new build and there's an opportunity to make sure there is some shade there available, I would need to get better advice, the architectural sort of side of it, because I don't know all the details, but I suspect that actually you'd want something, a physical structure rather than one of the shades that is like one of the ones you put up and take down. They're great, but they do need a bit of maintenance to look after them, particularly with wind and stuff. So if you're doing any builds, I think it'd be good if there was sort of, how do you say, like hard, like physical shade. And you can get shade that still lets the heat through, but doesn't let the UV through. But yeah, I definitely get some really good advice around that, and I can put you in touch with where to get that sort of advice from. But it would be great if like the playgrounds had some good shade available, and yeah. And the thing here is that you might want shade from sun, but you might also want shade from rain. So it can sort of multitask.
Yeah.
Bridget, thanks for coming along. You'll be interested to know that our senior park staff are here.
Oh, yay.
And have heard what you have to say, and particularly in around health and safety for their staff. I know that they do provide and offer good advice around being sun smart, and Noel, they also advocate strongly for the use of EVs, as you acknowledged. So messages have been heard. Bridget, thanks very much for coming along. It's a timely visit from you. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Who should I give these hats to?
Mr. Morris is coming.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll be emailing that stuff, and I'm very happy to email it to you two as well. If I can get the email addresses, are they on the website somewhere?
If they come into us at council, staff will disseminate them across everybody for you.
Cool. That sounds fabulous. And yeah, happy for people to get in touch with me for further questions, and I can try to find out answers if I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kia ora. Thanks, Bridget.
Yeah.
Murihiku Kai Collective, welcome along. Welcome, Rochelle.
Tēnā koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today about our mahi to create a good food roadmap for Murihiku. Ko waia hau, he uri hau o ngā pui, Ngāti Whanaunga me Ngāti Maru, ko Rochelle Francis tōku ingoa. So I'm Rochelle, I work for Healthy Families Invercargill. We are very much like Bridget's presentation around altering our environments to support health, because that's all our kaupapa is really about. And so I support the facilitation of the Murihiku Kai Collective. This is Dr. Anna Palliser, who is a tutor at SIT and a member of our collective. So is there a PowerPoint coming? All right. So in August this year, we facilitated a one-day co-design workshop with around 70 participants from across Murihiku Southland. These people included mana whenua, local food producers and suppliers, kaupapa Māori initiatives, social and health agencies, including Māori and Pacifica organisations and food relief, people working in education, social enterprise, SIT environmental management tutors and students, community organisations, volunteers, Coin South, elected local government representatives, an MP, local and regional council staff, garden to table, and people with lived experience of food poverty. So as you can see, quite a range of participants. We're up to slide 3 now, thank you. So we utilise the Good Food Roadmap strategic framework, which was developed by Healthy Families South Auckland and the Southern Initiative, and is now being adopted in various parts of Aotearoa. Interestingly, recently it's been adopted by a range of local boards in the Auckland area. So I've printed a copy of this framework, which will circulate around the group. And this framework helped to guide our kōrero by defining our desired future state in 5 areas of focus. So in our co-design workshop, we began asking people to share their vision for Murihiku's food system. Some key themes emerged, which in essence were that participants want food to be affordable and accessible to our whole community while supporting the health of people and planet and sustaining a strong local economy, which is a vision that I'm sure we can all ascribe to. So participants spent some time exploring the burning issues, and it was clear that our community is very concerned about how difficult it is for people to access good food and believe action is needed to address problems in our food system. The burning issues that came through included poor access and affordability of good food versus unhealthy fast food options, food waste, a lack of diversity in locally grown foods and the need for more growers, reliance on national and international food chains and the local food system trying to compete with the supermarket duopoly, issues around land use, water, soil health and escalating impacts of climate change, lack of regional strategy and collective approach to addressing the root causes. So then we gathered participants around the 5 ideals in the Good Food Roadmap, which are food equity, food sovereignty, food culture and traditions, food for health and well-being, and food resilience. And the beauty of using this framework is that everyone's able to locate themselves inside these 5 ideals. They can see how their particular area of interest connects with the broad vision of a flourishing local food system. And also, each of these 5 ideals needs to be worked towards in tandem with one another as part of an overarching strategy and action plan if we're to achieve our big picture goal. So in our breakout groups around these 5 ideals, our community members identified a range of strengths and challenges that exist in our community, and they also identified, resources and challenges. That's what I said. Thank you. Please keep going. All right. And then this was where the really exciting part of the workshop happened. So we dedicated a focus time for participants to ask, how might we? How might we utilize these resources and address these challenges? A range of ideas were put forward, and here is a selection of them. Just noting that they're still at rough concept stage. So one group, I refined their idea for a regional kai coordinator. Similar roles exist in parts of New Zealand, often sitting within council or supported by council, and they help to connect and facilitate collaboration of people working inside the food system. This role was conceptualised as reporting to the Murihiku Kai Collective. Another idea put forward was, next slide please, was by Zeb Horrell from Riversdale to convert underutilised public spaces into permanent food production. And while this isn't a new idea, there were some very interesting new innovative methods and approaches that he suggested, which most significantly are already being trialled in the Riversdale area. Next one, community food hub. So food hubs are being used nationally and internationally to reinvigorate local food systems, utilising economies of scale to help alleviate challenges that small-scale producers commonly face and work on a principle of collaboration rather than competition. So you can see that our community really does hold the answers to rejuvenating our local food system, and it's an absolute privilege to work with them in this bold endeavour. We will continue to gather together to co-create a regional strategy and action plan, and we would so appreciate your continued support and participation in this. But for now, we just wanted to update you and provide some uplifting news and food for thought to take into the holiday period. Tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou. And myself and Anna are both able to answer any questions you have. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Rochelle. Pania, then Tom.
Okay.
Pania, do you want to pull that microphone in, please?
Kia ora. You may have been aware about the HIHA type program that used to run a number of years ago, healthy eating, healthy action, and a lot of communities drove that really extremely well with community gardens, and a lot of them still exist. Unfortunately, government took away the funding. So I really want to say this is really good, and it's really good that you've got a good community drive behind it and things like that. But where I was sort of going is like how we sort of build on those sort of like ideas and initiatives, but how do we actually support whānau to actually grow their own rather than creating dependency, creating independence. The other thing I want to say is that I seen there was a lot of initiatives going up around communities in regards to stalls where people just drop off their extra things in the garden and they Facebook each groups, and I hear that's working extremely well. So I'm just wondering how you build on things that exist and work.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we didn't share all of the ideas that came forward, but there were ideas that were building on existing models that exist in our community around providing wraparound support to whānau in need. A really great model and example of that is Spirit Army locally, who are moving people away from dependency and into being able to be self-reliant and then give back to the community. So I guess the Murihiku Kai Collective, we're wanting to provide space and support to be able to develop these initiatives and ensure they're resourced and support them to be successful in the community. So yeah, those things that you talked about are definitely things that we discuss in our hui that we're mindful of, and I'd love to share with you in more detail like specifics of things that we're involved in. One significant project is the Te Mara project, which is starting in the Aurora College grounds, which is really about helping whānau to become build self-efficacy. Yeah.
Oh no, that sounds fantastic.
Did you
Thank
have
you.
anything to add?
Pania, just try and restrict it to questions.
Oh well, I sort of did. I was sort of then going to build off the, how you
Very end of a long
consider taking
preface.
home those wee plants, and
Thank you. Tom.
I wonder how you would dispel a kind of economic model that I have, which is that as through the 18th and 19th century, as communities move from small local production, growing things in their garden, to to agricultural, industrial production, people became better fed, became wealthier, because it just became cheaper to produce a unit of a calorie than it was under the previous system. Now, you're advocating, I think, kind of a return to that previous model, but doesn't it fly in the face of history?
It's not actually a return because it's incorporating new technology as well.
Right.
So, and we're not like reinventing a wheel that's already been spinning and been discarded, because all over the place, particularly in the United States at the moment, there's these new initiatives to localize food resilience, because there's a recognition that this big agricultural machine that you're talking about that provides cheap food has got two big flaws in it, and one is that it's beginning to crumble with the crumbling of the way that the global economic system's going, along with climate change, means that system may not be able to sustain for very much longer. Like some of the big food baskets in the US that produce this cheap food are not going to be able to produce food for very much longer in the same way. So that's one thing, that the big global system is now hitting a lot of SNILs. And the other thing is that with some of the new technology, some of these local food places that are really beginning to make millions of dollars for the local food economies in various US cities are actually using things like, you know, great big greenhouses that are producing food on scale, but are doing it locally and generating local jobs. So it's not just going back to backyard gardening. It's bringing in new ideas about technology, but also about collaboration, like Rochelle was saying, and spinning a different wheel to build local food resilience, which is improving local economies across the US, particularly in poorer areas, but is also providing some security against the collapse of the less productive nature of the global food economy. So it's not like just going backwards in time at all.
And you may have noticed Anna knows quite a lot about this as she teaches the food papers at Southern Institute of Technology that are offered in the environmental management degree.
And I did a big study in America a couple of years ago in one of these areas, so I saw it happening in practice.
Yeah, I wasn't really arguing the converse. I just wanted to hear your response to that. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rochelle and Anna, for taking the time to come. I'm sorry, I've gone over time.
Yes, thank you so much for listening to our presentation. Can I get someone to hand these, or would you just like me to hand them around? The Good Food Roadmap?
They're on there.
Oh, have they already been provided?
Yes, we've got them on our
Oh,
devices.
that's amazing. Oh, this is the full version, which has explanation of the model in the back, so provides a bit more detail. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, councillors. That brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is the 2022 annual report of the Invercargill City Youth Council. The recommendation is that the committee receives the report. In the absence of any of the youth councillors being present, it is worth noting that both Councillor Crackett and I have been attending their meetings this year, and although no appointee for the last two, I think, but it is worth noting in there that Ollie Mortkinson, who's provided service to the Youth Council since 2013, is finishing in that role. He's helped to run the Youth Council along with Gemma Crawford, and has been there and seen many tremendously inspirational young adults who are now back and working in the community, and we're certainly grateful for the time that he's dedicated to us. So the recommendation is that the report is received. Councillor Crackett's moving. Are you on the committee? Sorry. Yes.
Yep.
Apologies. And seconded by Reverend Cook. Any questions? Yes, Trish.
Councillor Cracker, through you, Chair, are you aware of the J.R. Mackenzie Trust for uniforms?
Pardon?
Are you aware of the J.R. Mackenzie? Are they aware of the J.R. Mackenzie Trust for uniforms?
I don't believe so.
Right, because they are available. They talk about supporting students, and so that's available to any student who needs it.
Right. Well, that would be really valuable information to feedback.
So the schools are aware of that?
Yes, schools should be aware of it. Not all of them. They quite often need to be pushed to say access it, but many of the Rotary clubs support it as well.
We'll make them aware of it.
Yeah,
I can give you a contact.
that'd be great.
Any other questions? If not, I'll put the motion then. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Brings us to the minutes of the committee meeting back on Tuesday, November the 15th. Somebody would like to move that the minutes be confirmed. Moved Councillor Soper, seconded Mrs. Coote. Put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. That brings us to the Sandy Point Master Plan. Welcome along, Caroline.
Good afternoon. So what you've got in front of you is a report just to recap the purpose of the Sandy Point domain master plan project was to establish a long-term plan for the future of the park use, the asset renewal and the developments, and help us guide future funding decisions. The work we've undertaken to date includes site analysis, stakeholder and public engagement, and then we've done the collation and the review of the available technical information, and some establishment of some design principles and the key moves. Unfortunately, there's a delay in the technical data that we've been awaiting. So that's predominantly the LiDAR data, but we are also awaiting an Apati Hono, Tate Hono analysis done by Ngāi Tahu, Te Amarama, and an economic analysis, and then that LiDAR data. So because of the delay there, we're actually recommending that we pause on the master planning for now and re-engage when that data is available.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Councillors? Mayor Clark.
Yeah, on page 20 of board books, but on page 5 of your report, Caroline, it talks about possible changes to access and use of the reserve could impact the rights and freedoms of residents, importantly the stakeholders with leases, so that's Cooper's Creek. You're in a position to expand on what that actually means, because over on the next page it talks again about, under the heading leases, stakeholders with leases or a license to occupy will need to have documentation restructured until the management plan has been adopted. Now, it's no secret to anybody around this table that we've got ongoing issues with the leaseholders out there.
And that's, Mayor Clark, that's why we've identified it in the legal implications, because we are aware there are some issues there. But as the master plan is not complete yet, predetermining the outcome would be ill-informed. We're just basically noting in these legal implications that there will be some. Until the master plan is complete, they aren't in effect. At the moment, we've just got a delay. So we're delaying a request that we have to freehold land, and also with the master plan, the management plan, the current management plan expiring, as it were, we're delaying the review of that. So that's where the legal implications coming on. All of the leases and the licenses to occupy relate to the management plan of 2012, which we should be reviewing next year. Because we're not, we would like to notify them that there's a slight change in the management plan process.
Happy with the slight change, I guess. Just want to have some confidence, I guess, that we've had this ongoing dispute with them over their recent increase to their licence holding situations, that this is not some sort of attempt to sort of override that unresolved issue.
Absolutely not.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Cook.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, to Thrain. Given that some of the areas that we may be discussing are going to be or are already being affected by climate change, I am guessing that the LiDAR is really critical about that.
Yes, we do feel that it is, Reverend Cook.
Yeah, so in terms of the total amount of space at Sandy Point, have we got any rough idea of how much of it is going to be impacted within the next 10 years of the plan by climate change?
No, we haven't. That's why we want to complete all of that technical data so that we can make those informed decisions and make our management plan as informed as possible for the next 10 years. The master plan, to recap, is for hopefully 50 years, so what a 50-year plan of the land will look like. But our management plan, which may start to address or may have to start addressing some climate change issues, is for the next 10 years.
And does that include the types of revegetation that may be required?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ringy.
My question follows on about sea level rise, but does our council have reliable, accurate information that will guide us on the sea level rise? Okay, or do we Google it, or what? How do we work it out? Do we actually put some science behind it? Obviously, because it's quite critical.
Yeah. That's what this report is all about, is actually putting some science behind all of the information we have. So with all the stakeholders we've worked with on this, we've told them that any master plan will be based on as evidence-based as we can. So that's why we want to understand that LiDAR data, so that we can put that alongside the NIWA data and all of the other evidence that is out there to make the most informed decision possible.
Okay, so now for consistency, this information that we're doing for Sandy Point, is it going to flow through into the rest of council's district plans and all everything that we do that actually touches on the effects of sea level rise and stuff?
It's a really good question, and that LiDAR data has actually been commissioned by Environment Southland, and when it's available to them, they will, I'm sure, obviously distribute it throughout all of the councils in the Southland area so that more informed decisions can be made throughout.
Yeah, because the reason for consistency is that obviously, you don't want different rules for different the various different plans we have.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So good to know there's a regional approach being taken. I guess it's probably particularly pertinent for Sandy Point since it's the lowest lying part of the city, or close to it, if not to the lowest anyway. Barry.
Yeah, have you, I believe there used to be a ranger look after Sandy Point. Is that being looked at again because of all the antisocial
Good
behaviour
question,
that
but
goes on down there?
not as part of the master plan. That perhaps would be something that would come up through the management plan once we've actually got the long-term plan for the space to be visualised. It's not part of this immediate process now, Councillor
I
Stewart.
just believed it worked last time and then he disappeared. And now there's all sorts of antisocial things going on down there with cars getting into another and burning them out.
Rhea.
Just to kind of touch point off Barry's comment, in the long-term plan or the master plan, have there been considerations for CCTV to go out at Sandy Point to cover areas that are high risk?
There is CCTV planned for Sandy Point already outside of this process.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Tom.
When you talk about the need for the LiDAR data, which I know has been coming for a long time, hasn't it? Obviously the other question is, how much sea level will rise, and there's a range involved in that. My question is that when I look at a whole lot of initiatives, and I'm going to say around Southland rather than only in Invercargill, is there a common assumption about that? Because if everybody's assuming different things, if we assumed a different thing for Sandy Point, then we might assume for some other part, Southland or even Invercargill, then that seems counterintuitive. So maybe you don't know the answer actually, but my question was whether there's a common view about what we assume to be the sea level rise, rather than just a broad range, which
I don't hold a common view, unfortunately, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah.
I can't answer that question for you.
Mayor Clark.
Yeah, just one quick thing, Caroline, about the potential for the ranger, which you said is in the management plan as opposed to the master plan. Just to give you some feedback that obviously I live out there, as you know, and certainly the ranger when he was there did a lot of work around the antisocial behaviour, which has significantly increased since then, and I guess is costing the city to repair and to put in vegetation that discourages that. But he also did quite a bit of educational work as well, and also the ranger managed the Arete Beach access area, which at the moment tends to be that we just grader it if and when we get a lot of complaints. We have a routine for doing it, but if it gets too much, where the ranger could actually signal in advance of that, look, I'm getting cars stuck in here, or cars are being burnt out, or whatever. But I guess I'm just signalling that it's
so we have
helpful to be considering that.
Mayor Clark, we have rangers at Sandy Point every day, and every day they do check that beach access, and they do put in a request for service to our infrastructure team as and when it's required, when they do notice cars getting difficulty. So the non-residents of a ranger out there shouldn't impact on that at the moment.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, there are three recommendations, one that it's received by the committee and just two recommendations to council. Councillor Boyle, you moving?
Yes, I'll move it.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Soper. If there are no further questions, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for that, Caroline. Which brings us to the activities report. If the Minister of Dreams and Sparkles would like to take his rightful position.
Not supposed Christmas lights on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'll start off with the summary before I pass to Trudy. So a couple of highlights, I guess. The summary of the leisure and recreation portfolio report is continued recovery in our community's engagement with our services, and it's really positive to see. And that's off the back of stable delivery and stable platform of policy changes. So we're really grateful, and the teams are really happy to be busy. A couple of key points I'd like to note is I think it's really great around the improved performance with our Splash Palace's retail and cafe area. And whilst it's not a naturally assumed fit with a community service, what it does show is we're actually giving our community what they want when they need it, which I actually think is what any service should be doing. Better products and better goods. So it is great to see that that's being now reflected in the take-up on that part of our service. The progress on our collection with the museum service, I think, is really positive, both with the packing, the accessioning and the de-accessioning work, and in particular the work on finalising that collections policy, which is the key enabler for all of that. I guess the other pleasing thing is that Council took the move to fines free on July 1, and the positive response, the numbers seem to be suggesting that it is doing what most other libraries around the country and the world have shown, that you remove the fines and you see greater uptake, and that's the same here too, which I think is great for our community. And ultimately, I think the really great message is the vast and different ways in which our team are engaging with the community, both in delivery of services and running our facilities and providing spaces. I think it's great to see the degree in which we're getting out there and working with people to do our mahi. So happy to take any questions, or I'll pass to Trudy to talk to her point.
Thanks, Steve. Almost tongue-in-cheek a little bit. I was really intrigued to see the effect that the removal of fines had on book returns to the library, but I'm hugely anecdotally confident the same would not work with parking. I'll pull my tongue out of my cheek. Now, with the upturn in cafe activity at Splash Palace, does that also coincide with the introduction of the new hydro slides, with bringing more people in and giving them more reason to stay?
No, because I think we had a cafe there before the hydro slides, and what we have done is our team have really put the customer at the heart of our decision making around how we provide our services, what we provide in our service, and how we communicate the services to the people who use our facilities. And so you'll see that actually our participations have gone up and we're getting more people buying products, but there's also that other unique factor where people are actually spending more with us because the product's there for them. And you see that when we go to the pool, you do actually see people sitting in the cafe more, sitting down with their friends and having a yak. And it is that sort of social element that our community facilities bring to our community. They are hubs where people meet.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions for Steve before I go to Trudy? Nobby, then Tom.
Yep, two things, Steve. With the cafe at Splash Palace, I think we've had both private sector running that and our own staff, and being mindful that I'm not trying to compromise you for the museum going forward. But what's your view on staff running a cafe, given that they have other duties, or whether it would be better run by a private sector one?
I think each have Mayor Clark, I think each have a place, and what we've done at Splash Plus is, through the nature of the design of the facility, we've got one reception counter. Yep. And what the team have done over the last 18 months is we have gone through a change process where we've taken two teams and merged them into one, so that we can be incredibly efficient with our team delivering that service. And that has provided benefit both to our reception area and to our cafe area. And so that is one of the benefits of staff running it, is you don't have that separation of service, which means that we can deal with both issues depending on which county you turn up. You don't need to just talk about the cafe if you're there. You can actually ask about swimming lessons, and that is one of the benefits.
Can I give a historical context about the museum as well? It was a lease operation up until a time when the leaseholder fell over, not physically, but in a financial sense. And because the redevelopment project was on the horizon, it wasn't thought we'd lease it out, but there was a strong desire to see the service continue. Tom?
Could I maybe refer you to page 35 of Diligent, and the chart that's headed Animal Control, and just for some clarification.
Or is that for Trudy? We'll come to that yet. So it's just the Pools Libraries.
Oh, you're only talking about Pill in the library at the moment?
Yeah, sorry, there's two different officers reporting.
Ah, okay, beg your pardon.
Yeah, I'll come back to it.
Right.
Still had two issues for Steve.
My apologies.
So in the collection one on page 42 of board books, it talks about the collection being approximately 45 million objects. And look, I keep getting these figures tossed around from 2.5 million to 4.5 million. I mean, are we sure about that, or is it still a moving feast for us? Just helpful to know what the volume is.
Yes, you're right. You have seen a number of figures.
Yep.
It is that 4.5 million figure. We do, and I guess this is one of the benefits of really digging into what is in the museum, is we are seeing the volume come through.
Sure. Okay. And the other issue is just to give you some feedback on Lloyd Essler, which is on page 51, who did a bit of a tour around the graveyards and what have you. I got some really good feedback about that. My partner went, she said it was really interesting. And you can see in the pictures there, you got some young people there as well. They were quite interested in some of the graves. So that's, I guess, some of the ways that we might enhance our city, because some of the feedback we got from the 18 to 30-year-olds is they wanted more one-off things that they could actually attend. So that worked out really well.
Thanks. Any other questions for Steve? Trudy, to you.
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Chair. So some consistent results again from the consenting areas and areas such as limbs. You'll see the average time for limb delivery has on average decreased, which is a positive for our customers. There's also some information for you around work the communications team did over October, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So, Tom, my apologies.
Thank you. So page 36 of board books and the chart that's headed Animal Control, just for clarification for me, the third dot point of the explanation says impoundments were similar to October 2021 and all dogs were returned to their owners. But when I look at October 2021, it says 16 dogs were impounded and 16 dogs were returned. When I look at October 2022, it says 35 dogs were impounded and no dogs were returned.
That's right. I've
So
just
how can
noticed
that be the
that as
same?
well. So I will have to come back to you from the staff. They will be watching this and hopefully they will be emailing me.
Just to prove I read it.
Yeah.
Good pickup.
And just to prove that I read it as well, on a similar vein there on bullet point 1, it says following up on unregistered dogs has resulted in 108 dogs registered in October, and up the top it says 78.
Yeah.
Yes. I will have to
At
come
the
back to
same
you. I think they may have slipped through last month's commentary and it got through our proofreading
I think
process.
the first issue that Tom raised was an important issue, though, without being flippant, because we have had some issues raised about what we do with dogs that we potentially can't find the owners. So it'd be helpful to know that we've returned or rehomed. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, it's always really easy with good dog owners that notice their animals are missing and get in touch.
Yeah.
It's always a really useful first step. Of course, for those dogs that don't get as far as the pound, when the animal control officers find them on the side and can scan them and see where they belong, they quite often just go and drop them off there.
Yep.
Which is a big change in the level of service than we provided a few years ago, which was to take them straight to the pound.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for that part of it? If not, would somebody like to move that the activities report is received? Moved Mayor Clark, seconded Tom. There are no questions or comments. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Councillors, that brings us to the end of the committee. There's nothing set down for in committee, so I'll close the meeting and thank you for your attendance. And if you could just hang around for a couple of minutes, I think the Mayor has a couple of things he wants to update us on. Thanks to the members of the public who've joined us on the live stream. Meeting is closed.